We are going to introduce the topic equation of a line, actually gradient and equation of a straight line. And first of all, we are going to talk about the gradient. And we are going to say that the gradient is the slope. The gradient is simply the slope. It is simply the steepness of of uh, of a line. You know how steep the line is, and we say that it is the change in y over the change in x. All right, and we are going to see that in a little bit. Like for example, if they tell you to find the gradient of, say, this line, okay, let's call this the first line. What you need to do is to just take any 2 points from the curve. For example, you could take that point and that point, and anytime you write a point in the curve, you write it in the form of x, y. All right, so where the x and the y. All right, like in this case here, x is -6 for this point. X is -6, and by x I mean where that line is touching this line. It's -6, and y is 0, as you can see. And then here x is 0 and y is -3. Okay, actually those 2 points are the intercepts. This one is the x-intercept, and this one is the y-intercept. In other words, where the line touches the x-axis and where the line touches the y-axis. All right. Now, to get the gradient, you're going to get the gradient, you're going to simply get the change in y over the change in x. That means you're going to subtract the y's and then subtract the x's. Okay, this one is x, this one is y, this one is x, this one is y. All right, so you subtract -3 minus 0, the y minus the y, and then the x over, so the x is 0 minus, and the other x is -6, so that we have -3 over 6, so that our gradient is going to be -1 over 2. All right, and even if we took 2 points from the same line that are not the points that we have taken, we would have still gotten the same thing. All right, so let's just do it. All right, let's take this point, which is, the x is -2, so it is -2, and y is -1. All right, and then let's take another point. Let's take this point right here, this point, and at that point x is 4 and y is -4. And let's use those 2 points to get the gradient of this curve, of this line. All right, so the gradient, let's call it m this time, is still the change in y, and in this case this y is -4 and this y is -1, so it is -4 minus -1 over this x is 4 minus the x is -1. All right, so this one is going to be -4 and -1, that is +1, so that one is going to be -4 plus 1, which is going to be -3, and then over, this is going to be 4 minus -2. Actually, it is not -1, it is -2, so that one is going to be 6, and the answer is still going to be -1 over 2. So that concludes it. All right, it concludes it that whenever you have a line, and from this line you can extract any 2 points, then you can simply get the gradient. All right, now in our equation of a line, we said the equation of a line is in this form: y is equal to mx plus c. If you write the equation in that form, then that one is an equation of a line. And where m is the gradient. So for this line that you're dealing with, the line that you've called y1, we already have m, right? And m is -1 over what? Over 2. Now I'm going to say c is the y-intercept. Okay, c is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where the curve or the line is where the line intersects or touches the y-axis. If you look at our line here, our line touches the x at the y-axis at the point where y is -3. That is where it intersects with the y-axis. Remember, this is the y-axis, the one running upward is the y-axis. So the y-intercept in this case is -3, and therefore the equation of that line is simply y is equal to the gradient, which is -1 over 2 times x plus c, and c is where the line touches the y-axis, and therefore it is -3. And that right there is the equation of our line. All right. You can pause the video a little bit and try to find the equation of the other lines. All right, so that when you do it, you see whether you had done the correct thing. Okay. So let us maybe consider the other lines. Okay, I want us to consider this line. Let us call this line y2. Let us call this line y2. And then we can just again do the same thing. Just pick any 2 points from the line. And we are going to pick that one, that point. Then which other point? You can pick this point. Okay. Now for this point, x is -2 and y is 5. Okay. This point, x is 0. I mean y is 0. X is, x is 0. Then y is y is 2. Right? You see, it's the y-axis actually. That is where that line is touching the y-axis. So already our equation, we know that it is y minus mx. I mean y is equal to mx. And then where does it touch the y-axis? 2. So plus 2. So what we need is m, which is the gradient. Okay, and as we have said, how do you find the gradient? The gradient is change in y over change in x. Okay, and if you look carefully, you can see that our y changes from 2 to 5, so that is 2 minus 5, and our x changes from 0 to -2, so it is 0 minus -2, and you'll be very careful with the signs. So 2 minus 5, that is -3, and then 0 minus -2, that is simply 0 plus 2, so that is 2, right? So our gradient here is -3 over 2. Therefore, the equation is going to be y is equal to -3 over 2x and then plus 2. Right? I'm thinking of having an example that is going to give us a positive gradient. Whenever a line runs like that, from, let's say, the left to the right, that line is going to obviously give you a negative gradient. But if you have a line running from the right to the left, it will give you a positive gradient. So let us have such a line. Okay, I'm going to place my ruler there and draw a line that slopes from the right going back to the left. Okay, so let's say that is our line. You see, that is our line, the black one. Let's call it y3, y3. And I want us to get the equation of that line. Okay, as you can see, the line touches the y-axis at let me just correct this. So there it is, our line. Then our y-axis is there. Good. So our y-axis is right there, and then that is our line. You can see that this is -1, -2, -3, -4. So our line is touching the y-axis at -4. So we know our equation must have, sorry, we know our equation. We don't know the gradient, but we know that the y-intercept is -4, because that is where our curve is touching the y-intercept. So what we need is to find the gradient, right? The gradient, as I said, if the line is sloping from the right to the left, the way it is doing, the gradient is going to be positive. So let's take any 2 points. Let's take this point and say that point. Okay, so this point, x is 6 and y is 2. So x is 6, y is 2. And at this point, x is 10 and y is 6. Okay, so change in y, let us say, so m is the change in y over the change in x, and our change in y is 6 minus 2, 6 minus 2 over 10 minus 6 over 10 minus 6. So this is going to be 4 over 4. Okay, and therefore our gradient is 1. Therefore, the equation of that line is y is equal to x minus 4. Alright, that is how to find the equation of a line given a line. So in summary, you just get 2 points on that line, and then you find the gradient by getting the difference, the change in the y over the change in the x, and then that will be the m part of the equation. And then the c part of the equation is where the line is touching the y-axis. So you just check, where the line is touching the y-axis, and that one will give you the value of c. I hope that made sense. Thank you and have a nice time.